command also install on a virtual machine. This is just stuff I use day to day, so I just install it there, just as part of my day to day debugging work, development work, not necessarily for production, but let that install. So it's executing this task right now. This is an Ansible task that's getting executed right now. It's doing an APT upgrade. Okay, so that's done. So what it's doing now, it's doing an APT install. It's installing Python 3, development flavor. It's installing PEEP 3 and virtual env. So let that get installed, and then we'll continue on to the next step in this demo, which would be to basically pack the operator code base. So after we install this tooling, the next thing would be to say, okay, all of this code we have sitting here will be bundled into a file similar to this file here. So we're creating what's called a Charmfile. So what a Charmfile is, it takes your entire code base, it bundles it into a container. That container is then deployed into a cluster, a Kubernetes cluster. And once that container is deployed, events will be fired as soon as the container starts running. And when those events are ready is what you see here. So there's a file here called, this is the Jana charm here, right? So it's subclassing the Charmbase. All right, so all of this is, we're using Charmbase, right? We're subclassing Charmbase, we're creating a Jana charm. We're saying once we see this container ready, we want to fire this routine, right? So it's a hook, right? It's to say, listen for these events. If you see that the Jana front end container is started, run this hook. If you see that the Jana middleware container is ready, run this hook. And in this hook, we would call specific Ansible plays, to customize what happens when containers come up and running. So that's basically the core of an operator, right? Is to say, I have a way to see what's deployed, and I can fire events based on changes on my deployment. And basically, I'm using Python as a way to manage that whole process to say, when this container gets deployed, fire this event. When this container gets deployed, fire this event. When there's a config change, fire this event. And those events can be specific things, right? So in my case, what I'm doing here, I'm adding custom layers to my containers. So what Charm operators let you do, they let you deploy a typical Docker, image into a cluster. And once the image is up and running, you can dynamically add new layers to that container at runtime. And those layers, once they get added, a new plan, they get what's called a replan. So basically, this is basically, mixing up all of the layers to create a new image, right? And then the container will be restarted. That way, you can have a container in production, and you can still add new layers to that container at runtime using an event-driven platform. That's basically what the Charm operator is. It's a way for us to say, you can deploy a container, fine. But once that container is up and running, that's not the end. We can also add new layers to that container and create new plans, and then restart the container with that new layer enabled. And you could get very fancy at how many layers you want to add to a container. Okay, so right now we're still packing, so we're still here. So let's go back to our prepare stage. So we were here. We're now end to end. We're in our molecule. End-to-end scenarios, we're preparing things. So we're in here, we're doing an exact prepare. We're packing the operator code into a file that looks like this file here, a charm file. that we would then deploy into our Kubernetes cluster. So let's take a look at our Kubernetes cluster right now. So right now it still looks like this. Okay, these are just the basic services that the Kubernetes cluster came with. Okay, these are the controller and the model we just added to that cluster. And then we would create a container image that's basically the operator. We then deploy that container image into our cluster. That operator then will then say, okay, which one of my services do I need up and running? And the way it knows, it says, okay, this is my metadata file. I have this service, and I have this service, and I have this service, and they're all running on Ubuntu images right now. And we can change all of this later on, of course. Okay, so we're still packing the operator, so that takes a little bit of time. Let's be patient with it. Let's let it pack. Let me take a sip here. So let's take a look at the operator while that's happening. So if you notice this virtual machine, okay, I gave it 8 cores. These are the 8 CPUs that I've assigned to it. I gave it 18 gigs of RAM, okay, and I also gave it 100 gigs of hard drive space. And that's enough to install Kubernetes. It's enough to install a whole bunch of services into that Kubernetes cluster. So it's pretty beefed up. For local deployment, of course. So as you can see here, this is basically all the CPU. If you look at the top here, this is all the CPUs that are running and how much load is on the CPU. This is giving you the load average for all the CPUs. This is telling you how much memory we're using. So of course we're not that heavy yet because it's very early in the deployment. But as more services are deployed, you will see more memory getting used here. You'll see the CPUs get a little bit more busier. Hopefully we'll never get into a swap. Okay. So we're still packing while that's happening. Usually while that's happening, I'll just keep an eye on the processes here just to see who's doing what, how much load is being spread around on each one of the CPUs. One more time, we have 8 CPUs here, 0 through 7. We have 8 gigs of RAM. We're very early in our deployment right now. The code for the operator is getting packed by the Charmcraft tool. Charmcraft is how you pack. It's how you craft the operator. You take all of the code, you bundle into a zip file. That zip file get put into a container. That container get pushed into a Kubernetes environment, and that container start deploying all your services based on your Charmfile. This is the Charmfile. Let me pull up our Charmfile. All right, based on your Charmfile. So in our Charmfile, like I said one more time, we have 2 services that we've defined in our Charmfile. Our main 2 services for now, they are our front end application, which is the Vue.js application. So there'll be our Vue.js application will be deployed in a container. Our middleware application will be deployed in a container as well. And they're all both using an Ubuntu image for now. Obviously all this can change over time, but for now, as far as like getting at the